Hi, it's me, Alex, again. I'm going to try and talk about the educational system here in America and indoctrination, since some people have really wanted to know what indoctrination is. So I have a whole bunch of notes here, uh, and I'm going to open up with saying I hope everyone's having a wonderful day and that they're happy and taking care of their children, if they're parents, or their dogs, fur babies. Okay, anyways, so in the 19th century, um, that's when education started to become a thing here in the States. And that was January 1st, 1801. It's been 219 years, so that's pretty much just a little over half of American history and year-wise. Indoctrination is the um, idea basically that you coerce or persuade and your thoughts and control them, reform the thought. It is the idea that the human mind can be altered or controlled by certain psychological techniques, and therefore, the like basically brainwashing. So let's see. Here in Texas, we have. Well, here's some fun facts just to get it off of the out of the way. The largest university of Texas is A&M. Texas enrollment of 62,952 students through 2017 and through May 10th, 2019. It's a lot of people. The smallest school in the school district of Texas is Divide ISD. 2015, their promotion ceremony featured a mere 11 students. And the district had as few as 8 students at the beginning of 2015. When I lived in Lufkin, there was a girl that I worked with who was a hairstylist, and she graduated with only 8 students in her graduating party. So I know that that's true. Charter schools are basically wiping out the educational system, and I think that the reason for that is because they're trying to brainwash even further using indoctrination. But charter schools take funding from local educational systems, and because parents are unsatisfied with the way that educational systems are working already, they're wanting to explore different ways to educate their children, so they find charter schools and feel like they're appropriate, even though they're actually hurting the real community, the state funds, and everything around them. So I found that out and found that to be very interesting. So let's see. The history in school only shares the perspective of one side of history, and for the most part isn't true. That's indoctrination's fault. Why is this damaging? Educational systems are using emotional manipulation to coerce a particular belief. Not being taught the truth in a school is damaging for everyone involved, and it becomes generational. Just like living in the ghetto can become generational. Let's see. So when media was bought out by the Clintons, the Telecommunications Act of 1996, it was signed by Bill Clinton, bipartisan support by both parties, Republican and Democrat. So that's something to consider. Basically allowed corporate medias to merge to the media would be controlled by fewer and fewer local businesses. By 2012, Barry Soetoro repealed the Smith-Mundt Act, which legalized propaganda inside the U.S., paving the way for fake news. So the Clintons own like CNN, ABC, all those major networks, right? And they're the ones pumping in the propaganda and false news, which is also allowed into our school systems due to indoctrination. So educational indoctrination kind of spills out. There's truth versus lies in history. There's the bell curve. There's the SBOE, the Texas State Board of Education, and then who are the Board of Education, and how young are people getting indoctrinated? How does it affect our emotions, our spirituality, and our success? Um, there are 5.5 million public school students in Texas. 5.5 million, that's a lot of little guys out there. So, first, the SBOE, the State Board of Education, sets policy and standards for Texas public schools. The primary responsibilities of the SBOE include setting curriculum standards, reviewing and adopting instructional materials. That's their job. Oh, and back to universities. Baylor University is the oldest school in Texas, and it originated in 1845. All right. 15 state board members elected by Texans have four-year terms. Each member represents about 1.8 million Texans. And on October 26, 2010, the colleague letter clarifies the relationship between bullying and discrimination, harassment, and reminds schools that limiting the response students for federal violation of students and civil rights. So they have a bill that states for there's teacher and students to prevent racial profiling, bullying, for sexual orientation, and all this, which shouldn't even be an issue in schools. Like, that just shouldn't be a thing. Anybody should be able to go to school and feel free to get educated. Not indoctrinated, in my opinion, but educated. So May 16th, 2011, informs the school districts of these bills and these federal violations of civil rights, right? And on May 26, 2011, merging of the technology in the schools. So basically allowing brainwashing devices to be invited into school and have more power over students than teachers do. Teachers are afraid to tell their students to get off their phones and to get off their laptops that were provided for them to watch YouTube, to be educated with when they're actually watching YouTube videos. I think it's really disrespectful that we've allowed our children to treat our teachers this way, and the teachers are being told to only perform one side of American history, which I find to be disturbing. They aren't allowed to express their own views, which I find to be disturbing. And when a child does ask about a different view, they are told that they are wrong and intimidated, and they probably allow bullying to that child after that for having a free mind, which I find to be very wrong and unfair. So, let's see, moving on. So how consistent is this existing in law with elementary and secondary schools? It is as young as kindergarten that these ideas and beliefs, propaganda, are being indoctrinated into the school system. So let's see. I've got the current commissioners of educations, their names. I have the SBEC, State Board of Education certification. Who runs that, and the public school system, and who runs that. But their names really aren't important, and you can look them up. They're online. So what's wrong with charter schools basically is, for nearly a decade, the state decreased its funding for schools, making it inequitable, I can't say the word, school funding system even more unequal. The rapid expansion of charter schools has further drained public schools of funds. Texas public schools have two revenue streams: the local property tax and the state funding. So again, I already mentioned that, and that's just a bit more thorough explanation of why it's wrong. Let's see here. We have turning public schools into tools for indoctrinating students with propaganda and misinformation of facts and truth. Now, De Sousa, I think that's De Sousa, he influenced these decisions. He became a naturalized citizen in 1991, Indian-born American, author, filmmaker, convicted felon, and conspiracy theorist. From 2010 to 2012, he was president of the King's College, a Christian school, until he resigned after allegedly committing adultery. Allegedly. So I think what happens here is people get intimidated by the truth and real fact information that they want to get rid of you, like everyone wants to get rid of me. So he got doxxed. But I think he actually just resigned on his own. And the lie in the statement that I just said is that he's all for propaganda in the school when actually he's opposed to it. That's the real life story. And that's why he was convicted of adultery. And that's why he got blasted all over the media for being a dirty, rotten scoundrel. It's because he was trying to get the school system to actually start preaching the truth about American history. And this is a Indian-born American, and he knows more about American history than most Americans do that were born here, which is crazy sad. So this guy really pissed off the Democratic Party and the liberals, and that's why they tried to frame him with adultering. Just kind of have to repeat a lot of this stuff to you since you guys have asked me to repeat so much. So I'm just repeating it enough times to hopefully where it sinks in to your poor little brains. All right. So the indoctrination is a process of including a person with ideas, attitudes, cognitive strategies, or professional methodologies. See doctrine. Doctrine is the difference of indoctrination. It's the opposite of. So some distinguish indoctrination. An educated person is expected not to question or critically examine the doctrine they learned. That is by definition of what indoctrination is. Do not question, do not critically examine the information you are giving. Just accept it. Just accept it and know it to be the truth, even though it's not. So why is this wrong? Because adults are supposed to be critical thinkers, evaluating ideas based on their own merit, depending their intellectual sovereignty, the right to decide for themselves with ideas of their own. That's why it's wrong to be indoctrinated, because you're a human being and you're allowed to have the freedom to express yourself the way you want to. We live in America. It's a free country for now. So they don't leave it up to the person to basically accept or reject the information. They just want you to accept the information. Indoctrination is always an insult to a personal liberty, an insult. It's an insult to your intelligence to be indoctrinated. And it affects your personal liberty when foisted upon a normal adult. All I've been receiving lately is insults. Interesting. To avoid indoctrination requires that we remain aware of our authority over students, lest we abuse our power and intrigue upon the autonomy. Indoctrinated produces students who lack the motivation to pursue knowledge for themselves. Go figure. I've been educating people left and right because they just refuse to look at the information. They're just not motivated to think for themselves, which is really sad. You have a brain, you should use it. Example, teaching someone to accept a set of beliefs without questioning them sounds like communism. All right. A tutor imparts an education, whereas an individual learns from his surroundings. Learning is knowledge gained through experience, and education is knowledge gained through teaching. Education is well organized, at least that's what they say, whereas learning is something that is related to an individual perception. And this was posted September 22nd, 2017. So, yeah. Education is the opposite of indoctrination. They are yin and yang, relationships to both while sharing the same value. Education representing positive value, while indoctrination represents compromise of the same value. So these teachers that know the difference out there in the educational system, I can't. I mean, I'd like to apologize to you. I mean, personally, I am sorry that you have to go through this, and the people who do know the truth aren't allowed to tell you because they're educators and it's not their job. Their job is just to provide the same information that they have, even though they may not feel that way, which, as an educator, I'm not an educator, but I have taught people plenty of things. And as an educator, I would feel so disrespected if a student of mine just didn't want to learn because it was different than what they heard or wasn't open to the information that I had. I think that would be really wrong. So indoctrination, once again, means you teach that a person has a one-sided view of something and ignore or dismiss opinions that don't agree with your view. This is a cult. Political entities and even fans of sports teams are often said to indoctrinate their followers. And I've seen that happen in sports. People are like, A&M, blah, 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 they're all stupid. And then people are like, UT, all the way, blah, blah, blah. And you must, if you live in Austin, you have to be, a UT fan, which isn't true. You can be whatever you want. Okay, do I feel like this brainwashes people? Yes. Like I said, I believe it coercively persuades and controls people's thoughts and the human mind. And like I said, this has been going on for 219 years. It's not always negative. The 19th century and when it began to see regular use in the sense causing someone to absorb and take on certain opinions and principles. So we were able to discover that it really worked in the school systems 219 years ago, and we've been using it ever since. And with the rise of social media, it has made it more possible for this misinformation to be stirred around and stirred around and stirred around, which is why we are here, which is why we are at war with each other. Scary, scary times out there. It's the reason I'm being doxxed. The reason my school keeps receiving messages about stuff that, I'm doing. And the reason I keep receiving memes from people. Keep up the memes, y'all. Those are funny. I don't think that liberals can meme very well, but the one that I got was pretty good. So anyways, what I feel indoctrination does to your, how it emotionally abuses you, real quick. It plays on guilt. It plays on fear. It plays on shame. It plays on who's better in society and who's weaker in society. And it plays on all those things emotionally and makes you feel emotionally charged for feeling guilty for a past you didn't have anything to do with, for privilege you do not have. Try and remember, privilege only belongs to the super poor, minorities, and super poor. So it's a classism thing.